Hello, and welcome to the Third Sector podcast. I'm Emily Harle.
And I'm Lucinda Rouse. And in this bonus episode, we'll be reflecting on a recent interview with Matt Downie, the chief executive of the homelessness charity Crisis, which is on the verge of an interesting strategic shift. Emily, you went to meet Matt recently. There's a full write-up of your discussion on the Third Sector website. What's cooking at Crisis at the moment?
So the main thing is that last year Crisis announced some new plans to become a landlord for the first time in its 60-year history. In this arrangement, it will buy its own housing stock to provide homes for people on low incomes. Under the plans, the charity will start buying one-bedroom homes in London and Newcastle, firstly, to house people who are experiencing homelessness and accessing its services, with the aim of purchasing 100 homes over the next 3 years, rising to 1,000 over the next decade. Matt told me that in 6 to 8 weeks' time, the charity is set to be buying its first homes. The charity hopes that the plans will help it navigate a lack of available housing, which has been making it harder and harder for Crisis to help find adequate homes for people in need.
Our aim is to have at least 1,000 homes over the next 10 or so years, and we'll try and get there as quick as we can. I mean, it comes from the fact that, we have around about 10,000 people that come to our services at some point during the year, and it's getting harder and harder and harder to find homes for people. And so we don't want to be doing this. I think it would make a lot of sense if the world was in a better place for a homelessness charity to leave it to housing associations or private landlords, but we simply can't find any housing anymore. So this is the point where we shapeshift to face into the real problems we've got and to say, no one really commissions us to do anything. There's only a small amount of our income that's for that. So let's be creative in the money we do have. It's been really well received with donors, with others, supporters, volunteers who say, I guess that is bold, but you should be. You need to be bold if you're really serious. If you really mean it, that you want to end homelessness, what is it you need to do for the people that come to you, and what are you role modelling for the broader solution to the problem?
How much is this ambition going to sort of cost the charity in real terms?
The idea is that we certainly don't want to eat into the fundraising that we need for the rest of the charity. We'll need to go after the one-off costs of buying homes. And we think that our first 100 homes will cost around about £20 million. And so we need to find sources of money for that. But we've started well, and there are some good prospects right here today that we know exist for us. So we're confident. And actually, to be honest, it fulfills the whole kind of suite of things that we might offer to potential donors. In many ways, what we're hearing is people are saying, well, yes, that's a natural thing for you to be asking. Maybe you should have been asking for that for years.
Very, very interesting. So £20 million for its first 100 homes. And Crisis's income last year was about £67 million. So although Matt said that they're not going to eat into their existing fundraising for the work that they're already doing, that is a big step up. Although I suppose when you think about it, it's not sunk funds, particularly with the housing market as it is. You would think that this would be quite a good investment in many ways for Crisis.
Absolutely. And like Matt said in the clip, this is also expanding its, as he put it, offer to donors. So donors can see that Crisis is doing this work, that they're actively providing housing to people in need. And therefore, that may make the charity more appealing than, for example, another homelessness charity that is focusing more on advocacy or focusing more on sort of tackling root causes. It just means that they're providing something sort of different. And it is a really big step for the charity. And he seems very confident that it's going to yield results.
And as he said, it's not ideal. You would have hoped that other actors in the private sector, in the housing association space, would be able to meet this demand for housing, but it simply isn't. So therefore, Crisis has had to pivot and adapt. I guess you could potentially draw comparisons to anti-poverty charities giving out food aid. Not ideal. Need to be tackling the root cause of the problem, because you're never, ever going to be able to keep up with the demand if you purely seek to address people who are already in these situations. But yeah, good luck to them.
I did ask Matt more generally about where Crisis plans to go next in terms of its fundraising income. Matt told me that the charity is keen to grow its regular giving, and that is including from its high-value donors, which are, of course, very important. And the charity is also hoping to boost its corporate partnerships, which is interesting. And he talked to me a little bit about how those corporate partnerships are evolving and becoming more of true partnerships rather than just transactional, which we've heard a lot about in the sector recently. But part of this investment is also an investment into branding, which Matt told me is actually already underway. So Crisis just recently brought on board Tamsin Baxter as its new director of brand marketing and fundraising. And Tamsin was previously at the Refugee Council working on its recent rebrand. So I'll be really interested to see where Crisis's branding goes over the next year or so.
Indeed, that red background with the white text and that very specific font is extremely distinctive. It will be interesting to see if they keep that.
And this idea of evolution and being bold was a running thread throughout me and Matt's discussion. And that includes exploring new opportunities like the investment into housing, particularly those that lie outside of the traditional charity model. Matt talked quite in depth about the potential benefits of working in collaboration with organisations or bodies outside of the voluntary sector. And he specifically referenced Labour's 5 missions for government that they announced as part of their manifesto pledge before they got into government. Those missions were intended to act as ways to unite different actors, different players, different organisations under a singular mission umbrella.
When the idea of missions was given by the government, I thought, what a great idea. What a great idea to say, do you know what, if you take something like ending homelessness charities are just one bit of the pie. You know, actually, there's all sorts of sectors. There's housing associations, there's business, there's local authorities, there's policymakers. And I think that spirit of saying, you know, there are commercial answers to these questions as much as there is anything else is really important. So I think we're probably just in the foothills of charities reimagining themselves a little bit. But I think if the first wave was the kind of the traditional view of charity, and then we started to see outsourcing of statutory services to charities. Now we're kind of imagining our third wave here, and it's got to involve business. It's got to involve a wider offer to society to say you can be part of solutions too.
Mm. Have you been engaging in the sort of impact economy discussions at all? Because this is sort of, I'm drawing ties here a little. Yep. Yeah.
I have been in touch with the leadership of the Office for the Impact Economy, and particularly would love to talk to them about how we can come together on the providing housing for people who are experiencing homelessness. We'll see how it goes. It's early days, but to me that's a great idea, the idea of leveraging really good commercial and social will for collective impact. That's got to be a good thing. I don't know where it will go, but we'll give it a good chance. Yeah.
Sounds cautiously optimistic, but in the meantime, moving ahead with their plans to buy their own housing.
Absolutely. And one of Matt's other observations in relation to the impact economy, which I found quite thought-provoking, was that sometimes charities can become used to just accepting the pots of money that they get given and sort of settling for that. But as Matt pointed out, the impact economy can offer mechanisms for multiplying that money. So, for example, in matched funding programs or other forms of investment, simply by collaborating with other players outside of the insular charity world. So I thought there was an important learning there. Sort of don't allow yourself to settle or become too siloed in your thinking when it comes to funding, because the right partnerships might help you reimagine that. One of the other things that really struck me when speaking with Matt was his clear passion for charity campaigning and advocacy. He's also part of the Charity Reform Group, which is a cohort of 15 charity leaders with a shared interest in amplifying the voice of the sector. I asked him about his work in the group, and here's what he said.
To see ourselves as an equal kind of partner in the way social change or policy making happens, in the same way as business does, same way as government does and civil servants, is trying to do that and give a bit of mojo back to charity leadership, basically. And I don't know where that'll go, but I like the idea that it's a bit messy. It's not perfect. It doesn't come out of some very kind of austere institution. It's just about a few people saying, can we try some stuff here? And what you discover is there is a bit of a confidence gap. You know, you look, for example, at, you know, complicated social issues where actually there are good charities, but they haven't been bold in their space for some time. People are firefighting. They're just worried about money all the time. And if they stick their neck out too much, government won't like it. I think there is a bit of restatement of confidence required. That's not to say that everything's easy and we can get everything done. But when we're at our best as a sector, we're a bit pushy.
I really like that quote at the end there. We're at our best as a sector when we're a bit pushy. And it is true. I mean, we see some of the sector's best work is when charities are not letting the issues go. It's just sort of a reminder that that confidence needs to be there, and it's important to be bold and take big swings.
But acknowledging that it's quite difficult to do that when you're firefighting, when you're really concerned about where your funding is going to come from, if it's about to dry up in the next few months or year. But it's really wonderful that there is this initiative of about 15 charity leaders convened by the Sheila McKechnie Foundation to make sure that it does remain a priority.
Absolutely. And it just shows that it's even more important to keep in mind as you're doing that firefighting work that there are other innovative ways to explore maximising your impact alongside other partners. So it sort of brings us back to that discussion about the impact economy and those mechanisms that you can really pull just through the right partnerships. So with Matt's work on the Charity Reform Group in mind, it's perhaps no surprise that when I asked him about what changes in charity law he would like to see, his first thought related to charities' rights to campaign. But the rest of his answer actually did surprise me. So let's have a listen.
I'd like a rock-solid campaigning restatement that campaigning is not just kind of tolerated, it's needed, it's valued, and it won't be challenged on the basis of politicians hearing things they don't like. I actually think, though, that the question of whether charitable status is still advantageous enough is worth looking at. You see the rise of people setting up community interest companies and different forms of kind of social purpose organisations, and I think it's been a long time from a range of different perspectives, take kind of tax exemptions, take the various different regulations that we have to follow that no other sector does. I would actually say step back a bit. Let the covenant, let the council say, can we be sure that charitable status is as precious and advantageous as it once was? And if not, what do we need to change?
So a question about whether charitable status is truly advantageous is certainly not one I expected to hear posed by a charity chief executive. It is quite existential, and I know, Lucinda, you've explored the concept of charity in depth in your podcast series, The End of Charity, back in 2024. So what do you think about this now?
Yeah, very interesting comment, particularly in the context of charity campaigning and charities working with government. Certainly the governance model has its problems and restrictions. I mean, the fact that the onus is on trustees who can't be expected to have oversight of day-to-day operations, nor should they really. They are volunteers. They meet several times a year. But in terms of the charitable status issue specifically, I have yet to speak to a charity chief executive that has expressed an appetite to give up their charitable status. And we've had interviews on this podcast with charities that are doing really interesting, innovative things in the enterprise space and are trying to shift. The majority of their income is coming from commercial activities, essentially, but none of them wanted to turn their back on their charity structure entirely, I think because of the tax exemptions. And I'm aware that the appeal of those exemptions have perhaps been diluted in the past year or so with the national insurance increases, which in many cases has negated the benefits that a charity might get from gift aid. But even in spite of that, it's very interesting to hear Matt talk about that. And I don't know, did you get any sense from him as to whether Crisis might be wanting to relinquish their charitable status, or was it more a fact that he just wants the benefits of having that status to be kind of amplified?
From my understanding, it was the latter. I don't see Crisis turning its back on its charitable status anytime soon. But he does raise a very important point here, that charitable status perhaps isn't the most sought after form of social purpose anymore, and should the government be looking at ways to incentivize and improve the charity model and make it worth all of the hoops you have to jump through in terms of just existing as a charity and all the regulations you need to stick by. And, it's a lot of work running a charity. So I think that there is some real food for thought there in terms of the tax exemptions aren't quite going far enough anymore. The national insurance has negated a lot of those benefits. Gift aid, is in desperate need of reform. So how can we improve the charity model, and how can we make it worth the sector's while?
We hope you enjoyed hearing about Emily's interview with Matt Downie, and you can read the full write-up of their conversation under the Features tab on the Third Sector website. From all of us at Third Sector, thank you for listening. Our producer is Jude Owen.